what it does to your head. Grab a beer, go online, rock with me instead.
Hey friends, welcome to the MaD Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Davis. Unfortunately, Matthew was unable to join us for this one. He had some family issues come up. You know, it's holidays going on, Thanksgiving. So definitely forgive him for that. We have a very special guest this week. He is the co-host of the Stoned Socialist Podcast. We have Randy. Welcome to the show, buddy.
What's up, Art Davis? How you doing?
I'm doing well. First, before we get started, tell everyone a little bit about your podcast and where they can find it and how they can listen.
Well, it's kind of still not fully up. It's just on YouTube and SoundCloud is the other one it's on. So it's just you have to search for it. It's not really something that's out in the podcast in terms of RSS feed yet, but that should be happening very shortly. We have 8 episodes banked, and they're up there for people to listen to if they want to hear about the thoughts of socialist people.
So, do y'all have any like areas of focus, or is it just broad American political spectrum commentary from a socialist pothead perspective?
Yeah, so I'd say it's probably about 50% socialism or political type stuff, and then the other half just a random assortment of all sorts of things. But it's not something that's I wouldn't consider it like serious political talk. I'd consider it more like a Wayne's World kind of thing, like just a couple idiots shooting the shit about whatever they're thinking about that day. And if Wayne and Garth happen to be commies, and it was a podcast, that's kind of what we're going for.
So if Bill and Ted were to do a Sam Setter impersonation, that would be your show?
Yeah. It's Cedar, by the way, but yeah.
Cedar? I've only seen it spelled.
Right, yeah.
I've listened to like just enough of his show to sort of know what his vibe is, but not enough to ever hear him say his own show. So it's Cedar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good show, by the way. Interesting dude. Interesting cat.
Yep.
Okay, well, since we're talking about people in the liberal media, do you have any opinions on Lawrence O'Donnell?
Lawrence O'Donnell, he's an MSNBC guy, isn't he?
Yes, he's the host of Last Word with Lawrence O'Onnell.
I don't have a whole lot of opinions on him. Like the sense that I have of him is he's, fairly liberal, but not as much so as like a Chris Hayes. But yeah, right. He's, decent. I don't know. What do you think about him?
Well, see, I'm talking like a half hour ago. I was just sort of, looking through, YouTube and about the Ferguson, Missouri situation. And Lawrence O'Donnell on his show did sort of a breakdown of some of the documents that have come out of the grand jury situation, and he broke down the whole Witness 10 controversy and that whole thing. So I just went through and started looking at more Lawrence O'Donnell things. I was really impressed. It was really like cool. I'd forgotten about his show completely, and I found interviews with him, and I gained a lot of respect for the dude. So Maddow, Cavuto, any of the other people, if they're approached, someone asks them a question about a topic they're not all that informed about, they're gonna suddenly make up a very strong opinion that they have about it, right? Because they'd rather maintain that whole aura, right?
Okay.
Lawrence O'Donnell, oftentimes, if he didn't know much about a subject, so he was asked about the whole NSA thing, controversy. This interview was back when the Snowden stuff happened. And his answer was, yeah, I just don't know enough about that to have an opinion. And I I thought that was really cool that someone who is making a living on political commentary television was willing to say that he did not have enough information about something.
Now, he said that in regards to Snowden, like right after it came out, or how long after the story?
We're talking months.
Yeah. See, I disagree with you there. I think as someone with that job, it's your job to make it so you know about that story. A few hours after the story breaks, I can see what you're saying, but months after that story, if you don't have an opinion on that and you're in the news business, I feel like you're either trying to please the establishment that doesn't want a lot of media voices saying, hey, the NSA is spying on you. This is what the Fourth Amendment says. This is what they're doing. It doesn't jive. Or you're just one of those guys that wants to appear professional and serious and not, you're mistaking, neutrality with objectivity. So he just wants to stay neutral and not ruffle any feathers at the government or with either the Democratic or the Republican Party.
Isn't there something to be said for, like if his expertise is in, taxes, welfare, social programs, and not necessarily cybersecurity, for him to say like that he's sort of coming from a very uninformed, unexpert position, and he has a place that's very public, and there are people who listen to what he has to say, that he should have some level of expertise about the things that he does say publicly. Because that's sort of my take on it.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. More that if he was like a straight reporter than if but he's a pundit. And so pundits' jobs are to kind of be a little bit of jack of all trades when it comes to topics. You're supposed to have a little bit of a feel for major news stories. Like that was like, that was the story of the year for a lot of like award publications. So, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, we got to agree to disagree on that one.
Well, you're really not going to like what I'm about to say next.
Go.
Chris Christy. Okay. So first off, general opinions on Chris Christy.
Just a total Wall Street tool who will do whatever they say. Oh, and he has the perk that he has this kind of bravado about him that makes it seem like he's a straight talker, like a roll up your sleeves and hard-working middle class type, but he's just a total shit, piece of shit.
So, if the 2016 presidential election was held today and it was Chris Christie versus, let's just say, Hillary Clinton or Julian Castro or Kirsten Gillibrand, whoever the Democrats throw out to be their sacrificial lamb, I think I would vote for Chris Christie. Okay. Not because I necessarily agree with any of his politics, which there's very little of it I do. He gave an interview after remember back in like 2010 when it was looking like he was going to run for president?
Yeah.
He gave an interview in which someone asked him a question about like Iran. Right? His answer was, who was the guy who used to host Meet the Press?
Russert? Tim Russert?
But between Russert and Chuck Todd.
David Gregory?
David Gregory. He said, David, I'm the governor of New Jersey. I know nothing about Iran. Next question. And I for the same deal with Lawrence O'Donnell, I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. And, that's how you win my vote.
Yeah, that's a good thing to say. That's a good thing to say, and it's true when you're the governor of a state, worrying about the intricacies of Iran is not what your job is. So, kudos to him for coming up with a, catchy little talking point for the day, but yeah, he still sucks, dude. Look at his policies. He's only interested in exacerbating inequality and sending all the the taxpayer money up to his donor buddies. And he's more like direct and brazen about that than the rest of the government. Even like that's Washington in a nutshell is just a system of legalized bribery right now. Because you have a situation where 90+% of the time whoever raises more money wins the election. So it's just they just want to do whatever the donors tell them to do in terms of policy initiatives, bills that get passed. But Christie takes that to the next level. He'll have deals like, hey, you kick in a little bit of campaign contributions for this campaign for me. I'm going to do this for you and get this government contract for your company. And you can look this up. Just Google, Chris Christie, corruption or Sandy Relief Fund. Like that's another example. There's that picture of him hugging Obama and say, thanks for the federal money, dude. But then he takes that money and he hasn't spent a majority of it because he's kind of just using it as political leverage and seeing which of his, political, allies he wants to help with it, or what kind of favors he wants to do with it. But, he's a legitimate criminal.
But
I wouldn't be surprised to see him in jail.
It.
Well, he sounds like just an average Joe. Like, hell, I'd love to have a beer with that. People said the same thing about George W. Bush. And look where that got us.
Yeah. The thing with George W. Bush is that we already knew he used to own the Texas Rangers, ran the organization into the ground. He was governor of Texas, set it up for Rick Perry to run the state into the ground. With Christie, the same thing happening. My point was, I really respected that I guess talking point, and I realize it is just something he probably rehearsed. With Chris Christie, how did he get because he is the Republican governor of a deep blue state, right?
Yeah.
How did he get the legislator in New Jersey to go along with essentially eliminating pensions for teachers? That seems like such a, disconnect, and, he got...
the short answer to that is probably, corporate Democrats, or also known as blue dog Democrats.
Right, because...
So you have Wall Street Democrats who have the same, guys like a Rahm Emanuel or a Chuck Schumer, these real Wall Street friendly corporate Democrats who behave more like Republicans than what you would traditionally think a liberal would behave like or a Democrat would behave like. And so you get enough of that, and they all have to respond to the carrots and sticks of, the big business, just like the Republicans do. It's just the thing with the Democrats is their thing is they act like they're not, right? The Republicans are just brazenly open about it.
Oh yeah, fuck poor people, pay me.
Right.
And Democrats are like, hey, we like poor people, but pay me.
Right. Yeah. You got it.
You brought up the name, and I don't know where you're gonna go with this, but is Chuck Schumer not like the slimiest human being you've ever seen on television?
Yes.
That
is correct.
He seems like, he doesn't seem like he'd be, what was the guy's name in Star Wars? Emperor Palpatine?
Uh-huh.
He turned into the bad guy, right?
Right.
He didn't seem like Emperor Palpatine. He seems like the dude who wrote all the books that Emperor Palpatine read growing up that turned him into such an evil dude. Right? He's just slimy, he just puts off he just radiates something I hate.
Yeah. Corruption, I think you can sense it on him. You can feel it on him.
I have no doubt that Chuck Schumer, if he thought, I can make $10 million off this, I just have to have this guy killed. I can visualize him giving the order to have someone killed.
Yeah, he'd be like, execute order 66.
Yeah, whatever it is. I can visualize that. And, that's a high, ranking member of the Democratic Party that I, for some reason, endorse so strongly.
It's too bad Panda's not here to talk about Star Wars, because we could just go on that tangent for another hour.
Oh, okay, so I had to do an edit on, I guess it's 2 episodes ago, because we went for, myself and Matthew went for, I think 45 minutes on why I feel that Jar Jar Binks is the most underrated character in movie history. Go ahead.
No, I was just laughing. Go ahead.
Yeah, and, I really feel that was a lot of wasted effort since you guys didn't get to hear it. But, we will have the great Jar Jar debate sometime soon. Okay? But if you guys haven't already noticed, this is already a much more political show than we normally, do, and I should have put this at the very beginning. But, yeah, this is our politics episode, guys.
Yeah, I mean, you should also clarify that I am Randy Marsh from RB, so, well, feel free to edit that part out if you want.
Right. Alright,
or just edit out the part after I said RB and didn't explain what it is. Because if no one knows what RB is, you're not going to be able to find anything with that on Google. Food for thought.
Right. So here's the question.
That way the people that know what RB is will know what we're talking about, and the people that don't won't find out what we're talking about.
So this podcast has already ruined my chance of ever being president, right? Like, I drank my own piss on the show.
Samesies. Well, I didn't go that far, but yeah.
Oh yeah,
I've said president, future career opportunities, eliminating things.
Yeah, I got really drunk and drank my own piss on the show, so my chances of being president disappeared.
What episode was that? I missed that one.
Episode 3, and it's been taken down because we used copyrighted music.
Oh. Well,
yeah.
I'll have to listen when it comes back up.
When we take over the internet and I'm able to purchase the distribution rights to Cat Scratch Fever, I will for sure, put that episode out. It wasn't episode 3, it was episode 4. Episode 3 was our interview with...
In the meantime, though, just clip the song out and rehost it. Repost it.
Yeah, that takes effort.
I know.
Which I kind of have a problem with. Okay. So,
alright, and cut. Back to the show.
Oh no, continuation of the show. We're rolling with this one.
Okay.
The big news story in the world right now. Where are you from? Part of the country, or however, you want to, okay. Yeah. Are there riots in right now?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge. There are riots here in Dallas. There are riots in Oakland, LA, pick a major city. There are riots there right now over the grand jury decision in Ferguson, Missouri, St. Louis County, Missouri.
Yep.
What's the officer's first name? It's Officer something Wilson.
Darren.
Officer Darren Wilson. The grand jury failed to issue a true bill in, his case. He shot and killed Michael Brown Jr. And it's seen as this whole, racial profiling, whole thing. I think it's fairly conclusive now that it was a justified shooting, right? Like.
Well, that's what the grand jury thinks.
Well, no.
I wouldn't say that's conclusive.
As someone who studies the, criminology and all the processes that go into criminal justice, they didn't say, it was justified. They failed to deliver a true bill. A grand jury doesn't, say, hey, it looks like you're guilty. They say, is there probable cause to, make an arrest in a, felony case? And they actually weren't even told what charges the prosecutor was seeking. So they could have, done it for any crime. We feel that, there's an actual question about whether or not, he improperly discharged a firearm, or whether it's murder or, reckless homicide, whatever. They would speeding ticket for all it matters, which is sort of an odd way for the prosecutor to have done that. But I read the Rogan board and all these news report where they blatantly misrepresent what a grand jury is, and I find it fascinating how what part of the grand jury they say, like the way they represent what a grand jury is really influenced by their politics.
Yeah. And like the saying is, you're supposed to be, you should be able to indict a ham sandwich. What that shows you and what you should take from that is that the prosecutor did not want to, he basically threw out the case. He was basically giving, points that the defense would give had it gone to trial. And as the prosecutor, you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to just say, these are the prosecutorial side facts. This is why we think we should have a trial because of this, and this. And, he didn't do that. He basically, and there was I've read other things about the person that was, in charge of that. His dad was killed by, his dad was a cop killed by a black criminal.
Oh, wow.
Back when he was a kid. So, I mean, I've read places that should be a reason that he should have taken himself out of this instead of going ahead with it.
The name of the case is escaping me, but in 92, Scalia, in one of his decisions, he was being asked to rule on the grand jury process, and one of the things that his ruling entailed was that in a grand jury, only evidence of guilt is supposed to be admissible, and the person accused is not supposed to testify. Okay, both those things did not happen here.
Right.
So a grand jury is not a legally binding body in most states. A grand jury is a function of the prosecutor so that he has cover for if he presses charges and the guy's found not guilty, he can then say, well, I had to because my grand jury. A grand jury is people that are hand-selected by a prosecutor to basically have this non-legally binding thing simply for his own cover. And if they say, no, there's not, we don't feel there's probable cause to issue an arrest warrant, then, he can just do it again. There's no double jeopardy protections. There's no legal protections inside of a grand jury. You can lie to a grand jury.
Yeah.
Which is just fascinating. The prosecutor can present evidence that he knows to maybe not be totally evidence. If you're a witness, you can not lie. That's a distinction. But if the prosecutor wanted to get an indictment, he could have. These are people he picked. If he wanted an indictment, he would have announced, we're doing another grand jury starting Tuesday. But he's not going to. So he clearly didn't want to and wanted it to not be he didn't want to be the one to make the decision and make people riot. Right?
Yeah.
Now we have, 12 people who aren't, I'm not sure about Missouri, probably aren't ever going to be named, who are the ones taking the fall in the public eye, right? But the result of it is we have these riots. Okay?
Yeah.
What do you think about riots in general as a form of political protest?
I haven't really solidified my position on that. I'm of two minds on it.
What are those minds?
Well, I mean, I guess the easiest way to say it would be the Martin Luther King side and the Malcolm X side of the way I think about it, the nonviolent side versus the any means necessary to affect change kind of argument. I lean toward the MLK side I think, nonviolent peaceful protest, which by the way, most of this is.
Yeah.
In Ferguson especially.
So the only difference between a peaceful protest and a riot is one dude committing crime.
Right.
Right? Like, if you have 100 people out there peacefully protesting and one dude lights a car on fire, you have a riot, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly kicks things off. Another thing is, it's so easy for people who are just career criminals to notice that, hey, all the cops are over here. I'm going to go start a fire over here, and then I'm going to walk over 3 blocks down this way and get a TV. Or, opportunist and looting is part of human nature. Ever since like Genghis Khan days, people, looting goes whenever there's a vacuum in the power structure and everything's not accounted for and there's not like a order and lockdown of, rule of law. People are going to say, oh, there's an opportunity. I think I'll take it. Or at least a certain percentage of every population throughout history. So it's, it's normal. Now, in terms of what causes it to happen in the United States, historically, it's when the public thinks there's been a grave injustice done to one of their own, or, typically the cops beat or kill somebody, usually a black person, and there's a sense that once you have the badge, you're basically like a Judge Dredd kind of authority given to you, where you're judge, jury, and executioner, and you can basically get away with, whatever you want. Ooh. And so you have these violent, outbursts of protests and the occasional violence or property destruction as a result of it. But I think it's more of a symptom than, I think it's a symptom of just the structural, systematic racism of the system.
So you were talking about being of two minds, that you lean towards the MLK sort of train of thought with the nonviolence.
Right.
I'm curious, has that been shown to work in United States race relations? The reality is, Martin Luther King being assassinated had a lot greater impact on the civil rights movement than I Had a Dream speech, right? Like, I mean, as history, the further history progresses, we remember it a lot more, but, MLK being assassinated, Kennedy being assassinated was really sort of the impetus for the Civil Rights Act being passed and then subsequently, having any teeth.
Okay. Yeah. I think the assassination, kind of there's a martyr factor to it that definitely amplifies their message for sure. I don't know that I would sign on with that being, greater than their legacy while they're alive, or, I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, but.
Well, no, I mean, like, as far as an actual fulcrum of change, something concrete that happened that directly affected change. In the American Civil Rights Movement of the 60s and early 70s, I would say it's a lot of, violence. The bus bombings, the church, the churches that got bombed. It's a lot of violence that caused, the needle to actually be moved.
Yeah. Yeah, but, it's kind of the same argument that, like, Gandhi was making, right? Like, let them kick the shit out of you to show that your arguments are stronger, that they can't win with arguments, so they have to resort to violence. Even if they are the ones in power, and so I think there's at least a certain amount of evidence that shows that, you know, you have nationally syndicated photos of cops sicking dogs on black people protesting peacefully, of fire hoses, you know, things of that sort, will definitely stir some emotions in people that were, you know, kind of more far removed from it than their dinner table.
Definitely, and I only say that because like I am like you said, I lean more towards the Malcolm X side, and that is if you feel that your group is being actually oppressed, I'm not saying go blow shit up, but use the tools at your disposal. If you've got to light some cars on fire to get some people to notice you, you know, is that property damage outweighed by the at least perceived injustice or oppression that they feel is going on? That's where I'm at on that.
In terms of property damage, most of it is insured by, you know, rich white people. So I think, you know, it's not like, I mean, some people make the argument that they're only hurting themselves but, you know, maybe they're not.
Yeah, but like,
maybe on a certain level they're not.
I know when I get upset, like, I've punched the wall before. You know, I've kicked something and hurt my toe. You know, when people are upset, sometimes they do some self-destructive shit. And it's on a much larger scale when, you know, the rioting and looting happens, and it's sort of happening on a community scale, but it's the same thing. You know, the one little part of your brain tells you to punch the wall, and now you've got a broken knuckle.
Right. Yep. Bigger picture with this situation, though, I think, the way I think of it is politicians respond to the will of big business basically exclusively. The opinions of me and you and the average voter mean almost nothing because of the way the system is set up for just to be legalized bribery. And so big business doesn't really worry about civil liberties, about minority suppression, about drug laws that are applied exponentially harsher to minorities than to white people. So they're not concerned with racism. They're not concerned with police militarization. They're not concerned with police getting tanks. They're not concerned with police doing SWAT raids.
Oh, they definitely are, because someone's got to produce Kevlar. I'm sure selling weapons.
Yeah, there's that element, of course, always, because, you know, somebody's getting paid on this stuff. But suppose someone wasn't even getting paid, I still don't think that they would listen without some sort of either massive street protest movement, peaceful, or massive wave of riots. These are both two things I think that can get the attention of Congress and people in power, to try to make some change, hopefully, but it doesn't seem to me like they're interested in listening to that sort of, expression of injustice. Their response is just to crack down harder. Okay, we'll put our NSA out everywhere, and we'll listen throughout the whole internet of people who are going to organize, protest here or try to picket, or I don't know, do whatever. They have ever increasing ways of shutting down social movements before they even get started, I think.
Which is if you're one of the Waltons, that's kind of awesome, right? Like, if there's some actual movement in the public perception of whether or not Walmart employees should be unionized, you stand to benefit greatly by you know, hey, Twitter, look at how much money we give you every year to promote our tweets. It'd be a shame if you lost it. Well, now all your tweets about forming that protest outside of that walkout at Walmart are getting deleted, you know? I
think that could be a potential threat down the road with Twitter. right now I think it's not quite that explicitly, naked, but I could definitely see a scenario like that happening down the road as they consolidate, like to tie in another Star Wars line, when Leia says to Darth Vader, the tighter you squeeze your fist, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. So the government is like the evil empire, and they're squeezing their fist, and the harder they squeeze, the more the public becomes, slips through their finger like sand, basically, like, they're not interested in this control and this system anymore. They want to try something a little different. I get the sense that there's, on both the far left and the far right, there's, growing fringe movements of this is not acceptable, and,
Well, the growth of the libertarian movement is exactly what you're talking about, right? Like,
right, yeah. Libertarians, Tea Parties, the bulk of the country, when they get pushed to the fringes by, in an unjust economic system, or police system, they seem to migrate right. I went left when everyone else was zigging, I zagged. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of socialists in the country, but, they tend to go right.
I personally, I consider myself a libertarian. Where I kind of split things in which I really identify and understand the desire to, say, hey, government, leave me alone, right? The individual alone. Like, I think it's unreasonable that just a lot of the stuff there, until you get to the point where, a lot of the libertarians say, well, we should leave the businesses alone so they can pour their nuclear waste out into the river. Right. The free market doesn't fix shit like that because it doesn't work. It didn't work in India. And we had that stuff go down. So I've sort of split that, in which I've become much more like libertarian on like social things when we're talking about the individual, much like more anti-corporate as sort of what you're talking about.
In the classical sense of the term libertarian, yeah, and me too. The way I look at it and have looked at it for years is I want to be libertarian when it comes to individual people, and I want to be massively authoritarian when it comes to like corporate rights. Like I want the government to be the strong man, the enforcer, cracking down on corporate America, who, as I see it, currently just runs wild throughout the whole country and does whatever they want.
See, we allow people to set up legal structures in which they limit their liability. So right there, you're saying by becoming a corporation, by becoming an LLC, you're suddenly less liable for the things you do. So if your LLC does something that causes 10 people to die, you're not going to get brought up on 10 murder charges. Your LLC might get sued for the 10 grand they made last year, but there's no actual equitable sense of nothing that can be looked at and said that justice was done there just because you signed a couple documents and you have this corporate structure. That seems like that's so bizarre to me, that we've given corporations that power that when they do things that cause direct harm to people, they cannot be held as accountable as if a person does it. Whereas to me, they should be held more accountable because they're using the government to advance themselves monetarily above that of a normal person who does whatever.
I agree with everything you just said. Yeah. Corporation, as I look at it, is kind of like a vampire, like say Dracula, and that immortal, once they're created, they can't die. There used to be something in the law, that you could give a corporation the death penalty. You could say, you have been so terrible, you must disband. We don't have that now. Like most laws that were able to keep corporations in checks, they have been written out of the code. of the law, by those corporations. So I don't know if the founding fathers, intended or didn't think of or were fine with the idea that these corporations could get so powerful, that they basically could hack the system and rewrite all the laws to favor them and basically drill tons of loopholes into the tax code. So they're like a Verizon or a GE where they don't pay taxes. They make billions in profit every year and pay 0% income tax, for years and years in a row.
Question. I swear I'm going somewhere with this. But before I say it, I want to not sound like an idiot. What time period was piracy a big thing in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean?
Like the traditional, when you think of pirates, is
like Jack Sparrow. Like what time period is that?
I want to say like 1500-ish. But it's way wider than you would think, I bet.
So the whenever it was before the air quotes founding fathers were a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we have like massive?
Then, I think.
I'm sorry.
Continuing through past them, I believe.
Well, yeah, because Hamilton was a child of a pirate, right?
Okay.
Or he was born in the Caribbean or something. There's some connection to piracy there. Like my Wikipedia knowledge from like 10th grade there.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't the air quotes founding fathers have had experience dealing with like those massive tea shipping companies? You know, in the Pirates of the Caribbean, they used the East India Trading Company, which was a big one, and there was the Dutch Trading Company. These massive, the first companies that were operating on a global scale, which had tremendous political influence with the king and the pope and everyone of any size. They had experience with that, and I have a hard time thinking that they just didn't have the forethought to think that shit would happen again. Like they just allowed that shit to happen. Like they knew that was a real thing. They knew.
Yeah, you know, they were writing the Constitution to favor white male landowners. So they're not perfect. They're not saints. You know, they're just.
They definitely
they were way ahead of their time, but their time was a couple hundred years ago. So they did have the clairvoyance to know that the document was going to need to be amendable and not set in stone. So, they made it changeable. It's just that it's very hard to get. It's also kind of hard to, or it's kind of designed within the system to make those changes pretty difficult to do.
Yeah, which is kind of a problem, right? Like there's some. I have a problem with the idea that we have a government that this could be a different time, but the phrase "government for the people, by the people, of the people," a government, whatever it is, you know the phrase I'm talking about.
Of, by, and for, yeah.
A government of the people, by the people, for the people. That it is. We require 30 states to agree to a change in the Constitution. Right,
for amendments? Yeah, it's. I think it's like
33.
It's like 2/3 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so like 33 states or whatever it is. So like, why does South Dakota get to have such an important vote on? You know, if we needed a constitutional amendment that said, hey, corporations aren't people, or there shouldn't be there shouldn't be elections should be publicly funded. Okay, any of the stuff that I think a huge majority, just raw majority of citizens would say, hey, that's pretty good idea. We give the state of South Dakota such a huge say. Montana can shut the whole shit down just by grouping with these sort of small states that are easy to buy. If you look at campaign contributions, I say South Dakota because that's the big one where huge amounts of money are spent on those Senate races because those are the easy ones to buy. The population is low enough that you just have to get 1% of the people out there, 12,000 votes, and you just won yourself an election for 15 million. Our Constitution gives those incredibly small states so much power just to shut stuff down. It seems like, and that number is so high, it's such a high bar to reach. It seems intentionally, almost impossible. If you look at the 25 or 26 amendments that we do have, you scratch out the first 10 because that's the Bill of Rights, and that was sort of, an agreement that happened, that was sort of phased in. Okay, so we have 16 amendments that have happened, since the death of the founders, right? And what has the actual change been? There has been 3 of them that we had to fight a fucking war over, okay? Millions of people had to die to get those 3 amendments. And the other ones are they're important, but
Yeah. Yeah, it is the difficulty of changing it can be interpreted as a strength and a weakness. Because on the one hand, it's harder for people to change it for the worse, but it's also harder to change it for the better.
Which, I would like, I think, if you have a system that's supposed to be representative of your population, I have faith in people, I have a faith in a majority of people to make a lot more changes for good than for bad. Right? Is that completely misplaced? I have too much faith in people.
I do, but, you gotta be careful with it. I do believe in democracy in a more pure form than what we have it today. I like the idea of a constitution setting forth some basic rights, human rights and stuff. But I also understand that constitution is basically, it just gets immediately co-opted and used as a prop of the power structure. So what I mean by that is it means, someone said that the Constitution means whatever they want it to mean. And I agree with that in the sense that they can look at, say, well, the Second Amendment says right to bear arms, for the purpose of a well-regulated militia.
A well-regulated militia being essential to the defense of a free state. The right to bear arms shall not be I think I messed that up.
So,
free state.
In powerful circles of elite moneyed Wall Street hedge fund types, that is considered a very valuable and sacred amendment because it protects the rights of gun manufacturers to sell their product.
Yes.
And the people who have their investments in those gun companies are the same people that have their investments in Wall Street, in, McDonald's,
they
whatever.
Also own the hospitals where those people are going to be treated.
Right. Yes, exactly. So it's all something that is in their advantage to hype up the importance of this amendment, and to the point where everybody in the country knows what the Second Amendment is, basically. It's the most famous amendment. It's like a Bible verse to most people in the country. Meanwhile, the Fourth Amendment, which is against unreasonable search and seizure, which they now do to everybody, or have the capability to do to everybody in real time, with the NSA tools. That's not convenient, so sweep that one under the rug, and let's not talk about that. Let's just focus on the second, and then let's use the first one to
only when it's convenient.
allow the buying of elections, right? So, free speech and money now equals speech. So free money, buy whatever election you want, and it's open. See, it's just an auction.
Oh, and we're going to use the Fifth Amendment. We're going to eminent domain your house if Walmart wants to build an addition to their garden section. We can eminent domain your house because we have a societal interest in having access to greenery, right?
Right. Or like the Keystone Pipeline wants to come through your family farm. Tough shit for you.
Eminent domain that shit. Who cares? Right. Fuck money. Damn it, I was gonna try to be gangster. Fuck bitches, get money. There
you go.
Alright. I'm tripping over myself. I've messed up several phrases this episode. Just to make it clear that I'm an idiot.
Same.
Another thing along the same line is the fact that we have a written document that says, hey, these are rights you have. You have a right to bear arms. There's a right to assemble. You have a right to a speedy trial. The fact that we have these sheets of paper that say, hey, here's rights you have, that suddenly allows people to say, oh, well, you don't have a right to privacy because it's not written down, dude. There's no right to privacy in the Constitution. It's suddenly a limiting factor. Well, we wrote down these rights. Well, rights don't come from the Constitution. Like, we don't get rights are not bestowed upon us by 2/3 of the states. Okay, rights are things that we have that are intrinsic to being human. But the fact that we write them down in a constitution and we pass laws that say this is a right, suddenly that limits everything else. We write these down and everything else we don't write down, it's suddenly not a right.
Yeah, I'm going to take a George Carlin position on this when he said rights, they don't really exist. They're just something that we made them up. And so, I mean, he goes on to, as a part of his bit, he says, if these rights were God-given, then how come God gave different amounts of rights to different peoples in different countries? Like, England has 20 rights. Germany has 42 rights. All these different countries have different amounts of rights. Is God just bad at math? But his point is that rights are just agreed upon by a certain people or governments, and then they're enforced selectively, according to the whims of the powerful and who's really running the government.
Yeah, and they all sort of come from a certain place of when people feel that their self has been violated, right? Like, most places in the world, when I say this, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna use the male example because most places in the world don't consider females to be people. But Mr. Randy, okay, if I walk up behind you, pull your pants down, and stick my dick in your butt, you're gonna feel like your rights have been violated, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just about everywhere, okay? You can go into downtown Riyadh and give that same hypothetical, and they're gonna say, yes, my rights have been violated. I think that there are some things, like, you have the right to not have your body intruded upon. You have a right to not be murdered, Yeah,
so I'll meet you halfway here, and I'll say human rights, there are certain things that should be universal human rights and apply to every human on the planet Earth. But I understand that the ones in charge of enforcing those rights are whatever your local government happens to consist of.
Yes. I agree with you there. And, yes.
I mean, cause you could say everybody should have the right to this and that, but then there's just horrible brutality going on all over the place. So as long as there's not some strong force of good to stand up against those who would oppress others' rights, then you don't really have then those rights don't really exist.
And then your way around that is to say, well, that group, they're not really people, they're lesser. So just go butt fuck them.
Right.
You know,
open season.
Yeah, open season on pick any historically oppressed group. Native Americans. They're just lesser people, right? I mean they look just like people. They're I have to use the same amount of lube as I do with people.
No, I don't think Native Americans were even considered even a fraction of a person when the Pilgrims first came over.
Well, and even in the Constitution, doesn't it say that they're not even supposed to count non-natives? Or they're not supposed to count natives?
Yeah, I mean they're looked at as savages, like more like animals.
Like they were less than slaves. We enslaved these people, and we're gonna consider them to be 3/5 of a person. Those other people who, you know, have survived here for way longer than we have, yeah, not people.
Right.
But, hey, you know those blankets that we were about to burn because Sally with smallpox coughed on them? Let's just give those to them. We'll get some beads out of it.
Yeah. And now we're about to celebrate our Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Like how commercialized is that holiday? Like no one. Or, I mean, there are people who do try to think about it, but it's become, everyone has to, you're pre-gaming for a day of shopping now, right? Like you're getting a good breakfast before you go out to game day.
Right.
Like, Thanksgiving isn't about, any sort of, vague, notions of, you know, give thanks for, your family and, your freedoms, bro. It's not about any of that anymore. It's about, you know, get a good meal in, watch some football, relax, cause tomorrow, the Spartans are riding out to the, whatever the pass was.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, it is a holiday that's just, become basically a giant, you know, big business fest, as it's basically just kind of the, like you said, the Christmas Eve of Black Friday now.
Yes.
So.
Which, we were talking about riots earlier, couldn't like all this, like, every year people like die on Black Friday.
Uh-huh.
Couldn't you say it's like sort of, that's riot-like, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a situation where there's not enough security personnel compared to the ridiculous number of people, and so you have some disorder potential. But yeah, that's I would say there's less integrity in that kind of riot than there is in an actual you know, lighting a car on fire. Well, because you're mad at the system.
Well, since like right now we're having Ferguson, when was the last time we had a race riot or like a principled riot?
Well,
like Rodney King, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say, Rodney King. Yeah.
But how many other riots have we had? The Lakers winning the NBA Finals.
Yeah, there are a lot of more small scale.
Joe Paterno gets fired for protecting a child molester, and Pennsylvania erupts.
Right. Yeah, that one's not one to be proud of. That's not one for the history books.
The best part is I have all these people on my Facebook page, these psychopaths who post this stuff about, you don't see any white people out there at these Ferguson riots. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Just post pictures of people lighting cars on fire in Pennsylvania when Joe Paterno got fired. Like, these people who act like only black people riot. It just, Right.
Right, yeah. That's...
Or Occupy Wall Street? I mean...
I wouldn't... That's not even a riot, though. That was just a total peaceful protest. Until the cops started macing people. Or pepper spray. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I completely derailed. You were gonna say something. I hope I didn't make you forget it.
I don't think I forgot any.
Okay. It sounded like you were about to say something and I completely barged in and interrupted you. I apologize for that.
That's right.
So you just brought up something there. The police were macing people in the face. One of the things I don't like about the coverage of the Ferguson riots is how people are making it into, I say people, the media is really covering it like it's a race relation issue, and not the fact that 90% of the initial riots, that was a peaceful protest until the Ferguson police decided they were going to roll armored cars and rubber bullets into the situation, right? Like, a huge reason why this became a national issue was because of the militarization of the police force.
Yeah. I mean, the militarization stuff.
Hard word to say, I know.
I mean, that's just the optics of it, I think. That is a separate issue and a serious issue, that if the population of the country was as important as big money in terms of, who politicians are interested in listening to, that would be higher on the table, I think, of politicians. But, again, people crying out saying, hey, we don't want our cops to be an occupying army. The politicians don't give a shit. They're like, well, there are people running the country like it just fine this way, so fuck off. This is the way it is now.
It seems so bizarre that Rand Paul, of all people, is like the standard bearer right now for the anti-police with tanks movement. Yeah.
And he'll take kind of these little libertarian slices, tidbits of here and there, and cling to them and say like, hey, look at me, libertarian guy. I'm still a libertarian guy.
He's only slightly less slimy than Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, so when the rubber meets the road and the system and the establishment really want something, then his libertarian values go out the window pretty quick, such as, hey, we really want to go into Iraq and Syria again, dude. And Rand Paul buckled real quick. If memory serves. I could be wrong, but if I remember right, he signed, or he wasn't vocally against it, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he's in a position to where sort of the most important thing he can do has nothing to do with his vote. It's about what he says, right? Like he's
yeah.
For better or for worse, he's kind of in a position where when he talks, people listen.
Oh yeah, he gets lots of microphones. Yep.
And he's just so slimy, and it bothers me that he is the person who is the most vocal person in our, air quotes, representative government, who is saying the police shouldn't have tanks, and that bothers me.
Yeah, I think there's a few on the left, but they're kind of the fringe too, at least in government. But the left.
Go ahead.
The population of the country, I would have to imagine, is against the increased militarization of the police. I am extremely against it, and also just because they do, ever increasing amounts of no-knock raids, they call them, where they just, we received an anonymous tip that you have some weed in your house, or you're playing an illegal poker game in your house, or whatever, and then smashing the doors down, sending the dogs in. And that's how you get cases where, like the case where they went to the wrong house and shot the mayor's dog, or the case where they went to the wrong house or went to someone who's innocent's house and threw a flashbang in their baby crib, which, maimed the baby for the rest of its life.
Isn't there one of those cases where the guy, they raided the guy's house, and it turns out like there are legal grounds for, how they got they tried saying they didn't need a warrant or something like that, whatever. They raided this guy's house, and he was innocent, and there's people kicking in his door. So you know what he does? He shoots at them. because he thinks
Right.
his house is being invaded, and of course
Right.
they shoot back.
Of course he does. Yeah.
And I remember, I don't remember whether they shot and killed him or whatever it was. I believe he killed an officer, and he shouldn't go to prison for that. Like, I know they passed that law in Indiana, right? Where like, if you shoot a police officer who's unlawfully detaining you, then, that's justified, right?
I agree. I don't think there should be punishment if you don't know it's the cops busting in and you're trying to defend your house, yourself, your family. I think those laws on the books should stand and should protect that person within the system that we have.
It just seems so. The idea, like, why are we raiding people? Like, I get like, oh, they're just gonna flush all their cocaine, but how often do we have raids that are either have a good resolution, right? Like, oh, they go in there and they arrest a guy without incident, or B, cost effective, right? Like, how much money does it cost versus the level of criminal that we are putting a 10-person team together who are each wearing $5 million in body gear, okay? What is it? Either
because
A, cost effective.
You have to really suit up when you're gonna do a smash someone's door down, as opposed to what they used to do, which is just have a couple regular uniformed cops knock on the door and say, you're under arrest, or even kick down the door. But you've had a few cops without riot gear on, without shields and fully automatic weapons, and
a sniper perch.
It seemed to work out fine for a lot of years.
And whatever, like, what? So drug dealers don't have to go to Walmart? Like arrest them somewhere where, like, if you think they have a bunch of weapons in the house, don't arrest them at the house. Right? Like,
There's all sorts of ways.
There's so many ways around it that do we really need, it's just not cost effective for the level of criminal they're going after, and when it is cost effective for the level of criminal they're going after, someone always ends up dead, and that shouldn't be the goal of law enforcement.
Yeah, or there's someone's dogs. They shoot dogs at an insanely high rate.
Have you seen the video of the officer, like, whistling over the dog just so he could shoot it?
No, but that doesn't surprise me. As open season as it is on civilians, it's even more open season on dogs. Because I don't know that there's ever been a police officer who was fired or put to any charges for killing a dog. Because they always just say, it took an aggressive stance. Sorry. Right. But it was a Chihuahua. Yeah, well, it had an aggressive stance.
Dude, if your mailman took out a .45 and shot your dog, you would have every right to sue the city out their ass. Okay, and that's a profession where there actually is a reputation for dogs attacking mailmen, right? Like, it's so cliche. But if your mailman did that, you would sue the shit out of the city, the federal government, and you get every penny that you could get out of it, and no one would argue with it. But a police officer who, suddenly, I don't see the difference, right? Like, police officers can just shoot your dog. Well, why can't the mailman?
Yeah, they're both public employees, but the cops get so much latitude, and that's one of the things that I would say that, the Democrats should take this up if they were smart as an issue. Just say, we want to reel in the cops. We feel they've gotten out of hand compared to what cops have historically been. And it's not because crime is increasing, because violence has gone down, like homicide rates have gone down since
overall
the
crime
70s.
rates. Well, since 1989, I believe when it peaked.
Right.
I should know that. I look at the UCR so freaking often. I'm currently pursuing a degree in criminology, so I see all this stuff all the time. But, yeah, like, crime has been on a consistent downswing, since the late 80s, early 90s. And we shouldn't be seeing more police-involved shootings as less violent crime is happening.
Right. I think some of that has to do with the fact that everybody has a smartphone with a video camera in it now. But I think some of it has to do with they are getting worse.
Well,
I think it's a little bit of both.
So it's a valid point you bring up there with the cameras. When we have video evidence of police brutality, they're still not getting held accountable.
Right.
So do you know the Oscar Grant situation in San Francisco?
Which one's that?
Guy is handcuffed face down on the concrete and an officer shoots him twice in the back. Okay?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Gets like 2 years.
I remember that. He said he thought it was his taser. Whoops.
Yeah. They, like, what? You don't get to make that mistake. Like, you just killed someone.
Right. I thought
who you weren't even going to arrest him. You were detaining him during a loud argument, and he was in the way. You were temporarily detaining him and you end up killing him, and you get 2 years when, like, if I shot someone twice in the back while they were face down on the ground and I had them handcuffed, in Texas, I'd get the death penalty. Cause that's during kidnapping, during the commission of a felony. Okay? I would get the death penalty for that.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre to me that we have video evidence of this stuff happening and they're still not held accountable.
Or like when there's video evidence of the cop choking the black guy to death in New York.
Yes. Like, what?
He's like, I can't breathe, like 10 times. Well, he was serious. He really couldn't breathe.
Yeah, like he was, well, if you can talk, you can breathe, right? That's what the officer was yelling.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating that is a reality of the world we live in. Is that you can go through 6 months of training, right? And suddenly you have, effectively a license to shoot people.
Mm-hmm. And they've forgotten the mantra of to serve and protect. They've kind of twisted it to serve and protect themselves. Like, with the whole riot shields and fully automatic weapons and all that, the AMRAPs or whatever they're called. Is that the right word? Anyway, the big fucking, military style trucks. They're so obsessed with protecting themselves and not having any danger to themselves and any slightest possibility of danger that they forgot that they're supposed to be protecting and serving their community. Or like the dude that was shot in the Walmart. Did you see that video?
No, I have not.
Black guy picks up a BB gun and starts walking around Walmart with it. And he's just holding it kind of by its side like you would hold a briefcase, not even with his hand on the trigger, just kind of walking around with it.
Oh, is this in Ohio?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read about this. I haven't seen the video.
There's a video up now. And there's even audio because there was people in the store with their phones talking to the cops. And so you can actually you see on the security cameras, the cops rush in and immediately shoot him. And none of them did any kind of time or any kind of trial because they just said, well, we got to call someone called and said there's a black guy walking around the store with a gun. And so they just called it, they didn't call and say, hey, can we talk to your security people who are watching the video cameras and see if we can get a sense of no, they just immediately enter the store, immediately start shooting at him, and you can hear him on the ground crying as he dies, like screaming for his dad as he dies. It's just the most enraging thing I've seen.
If I remember correctly, in the state where that happened, it was a state that had open carry, so the police didn't have legal authority to even stop him. Like, even if they weren't shooting at him, they didn't have the legal standard, reasonable suspicion, they wouldn't have had enough to sustain, to detain him. If they had arrested him, it would have been thrown around because they had no legal authority to even detain him.
Right.
And they just show up and start shooting.
You remember you used to watch cop shows when you were a kid and they used to say freeze?
Yeah.
They don't now. Now it's, you're dead that's how they get you to freeze. So, what I mean is, they run into that Walmart and as soon as they get a sight with guns drawn and they just unload. Because I think in their mind, if I say freeze, and what if he takes cover and then we have a shootout and one of us gets hit or gets killed? Or what if he doesn't freeze? Or what if he points the gun at me and gets the shot off and kills me even though I've got the gun trained on him and ready to, pull the trigger? It's just instant, target acquired, and start unloading. And if the rules were set up as such as, okay, we're going to give you a lot of latitude when you get into hairy situations, but when it becomes blatantly obvious that you fucked up due to either negligence, or just plain evil, then your badge is no longer going to shield you from the law. You're just like everybody else.
Which seems so common sense, right?
Yeah.
I fully understand, sometimes police officers are going to do things that, might be a bit of an overreaction. But they felt they were protecting themselves. But sometimes it's situations like that, and I haven't seen the video, I've only read about it, but what I read made it sound, like that was just a clear case in which, it's indefensible. They didn't try to make contact with the guy. There was no idea that, hey, maybe there's a peaceful solution or maybe this guy's not guilty of something.
Right. And the people on the left will say, if that was a white kid in that Walmart with that BB gun, he would still be alive. And I can't disagree with that. I have to agree with that. That seems pretty.
Yeah, like
pretty likely.
Especially, I just know here in Texas, if there's a white guy walking through a store with, and we have open carry in Texas, so if you have your shotgun or your rifle or whatever, and you're walking through Walmart, first off, no one's calling the police, okay? And if someone does, the police officer's gonna make contact with you. They're gonna walk up, their gun's not gonna be out, and it's gonna be a whole good old boy thing where they're gonna treat it like, some city folk are overreacting and let's try to, make it not look so threatening, but then, they get a call, black guy with a gun. That's a situation. Oh, he's there, he's gonna rob the place.
Right. Which is why, I've heard somebody do a story about, a group of black gun rights, activists, open carry, group that is black. And, I think it was like the Young Turks were doing a story on it, and they said, whoever the host was that day said, this is a bad idea. These people are probably going to get shot by the cops. Because it's just the feel in the country of a group of black men with guns and the feel in the country of a group of white people with guns are two different thought processes to most cops, I would argue.
Yeah, and if you look at who's committing the mass murders, who are the spree shooters?
Right.
It's all white people, right?
Right. Yeah, serial killers, yeah.
There was the two kids at Columbine, white. How many school shootings in the past, 20 years have been black kids?
Well, in the schools, basically none. I mean, in terms of mass shootings in schools, none that I can think of.
The
Navy Yard shooter was a black guy.
Yes.
That wasn't a school though, but yeah.
Yeah, just in general, mass shootings, okay? it's always white dudes with guns, right? Like,
Yeah, typically. Yep.
or I mean, if you want to get into commentary on the news, it's possible that they exist in black schools. We just don't hear about them the same way we hear about every anytime two white people get shot in one place, it's a big story. When two black people with the gang shootout, and who cares?
Yeah, there could be some of that for sure.
But there's no Newtown happening in downtown Chicago.
Right. Part of that I think is just a numbers game. Black people are only 10% of the country, so in terms of, you wouldn't think that more than 10% of mass shooter people who just completely blow a fuse would be black. But it seems like it's even less than 10% from just my perception of it.
We're here, if you're just joining us, with our guest. He's Randy from the Stoned Socialist Podcast, which is going to be coming out very soon, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if we mentioned it earlier. Twitter, Facebook, where can they find your show for more information on when it's going to have wider distribution?
Well, I'm going to have a WordPress blog, so it's going to be the Stoned Socialist .wordpress.com, but I haven't built that yet. I just got it kind of reserved. And as for now, just go to SoundCloud, search Stoned Socialist, or YouTube. It's on there too. And then in the coming weeks, it'll be on RSS feeds. If you have a iPhone or Android phone, you just search the podcast app of your choice.
Right on. So,
I would also like to just say that my co-host is probably more funny and entertaining than me. So for whatever that's worth, if you thought that I was not super exciting, just give it a chance anyway, because my co-host, he's a barrel of laughs.
right.
And he knows more about socialism than me, because he was born a socialist. His family is socialist. He's from the UK, so it's not, that's
I hate freedom
something that would be crazier over here than it is over there, I think. It's pretty rare, but over there too.
Over in England, they hate freedom. That's why they still pray to the Queen.
Yeah, something like that.
So, yeah, I know how it feels being the not funny one of the group.
Yeah, you'll have that.
Because that's
need
the
a
role
straight
I
man.
play. I'm the not funny one, and my drug addict, alcoholic co-host just sort of comes on and embarrasses himself into entertainment.
Well, you're what they call a straight man, so you're good. You're a good kind of sounding board,
Right.
for the crazier one.
Right. I'm gonna embrace that. It's the first time in my life I've been called straight. Alright, you still have time?
Yeah.
Alright, so, let's talk, well, this is our political show, so let's talk 2016. How do you see the, and you're from, you said, so you're like a month from just getting 2016 up the ass, right?
Yeah.
How do you see that shaking out as of like November, a month before you get 2016 up the ass? Like what direction do you see that all heading? Primaries wise, who's gonna be the nominees, who's gonna win?
Well, I think if you had to pick right now, and history shows that it's probably not very smart to do that, because so much shit will change between now and primary time and then election time. But if you say guess, excuse me, gotta get these hiccups out of my system. Smart money is on Hillary winning everything.
Okay.
smart money for the GOP contender is probably. This is tough. I mean, probably Rand Paul. If I had to pick one, maybe probably Rand Paul versus Hillary. But it's hard to say. I could see a Jeb Bush, maybe, but
like, remember when establishment Republican used to be a compliment for a candidate?
Mm-hmm.
And now the fact
before W, destroyed their brand basically single-handedly.
Yeah, and I'm a bit younger than you are, and the idea to me that someone named Bush could win an election in my lifetime ever again seems so bizarre. Like even
you would think that, yeah.
Like even my friends who are like who've turned into vote Greg Abbott and Republican are like, yeah, fuck Bush. He ran the country into the ground. So the idea that his brother could win an election, the Prescott Bush is now our Secretary of Agriculture or something here.
Yeah,
okay?
That was the great grandpa. Yeah. Worse, what even, what's the word I'm looking for? Scares me more than W is his dad. Even though his dad, once he had the power, didn't as overtly, and I don't know, he made it look cleaner than what Bush Jr. did. But anytime you got a guy that's CIA or KGB or with any kind of intelligence service and he's running it, that's a bad guy to have running your country. And George Bush Sr. was CIA. He was the head of the CIA. Those people I don't trust at all. Even less than normal politicians.
They made a career out of being deceptive.
Yes.
Like,
right.
Of all the deceptive people, he was their dude.
Yeah.
Like what? we made that guy president. Now, that was, Bush was president when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
Which, it seems like it was a lot longer ago than that, but yeah, like, that guy was made president.
Yep.
So, you think it's gonna be a Hillary versus Rand Paul?
Probably. I hope if I had my choice, I would choose one of the Democrats that are furthest to the left. So as a socialist, I'm farther left than anybody basically in Congress.
Well, Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders calls himself a democratic socialist, so he's probably the closest to me that you can get. So yeah, I would hope for a Sanders or a Elizabeth Warren. Those are the two that are probably the furthest to the left, or the progressive side of the Democratic Party. I would want one of them. If they both run, it could be a threat of them splitting the leftist progressive vote.
Yeah.
And hurting both of them, which would get handed over to Hillary. So I kind of hope that just one of them runs against Hillary, so they don't share that vote.
Well,
but I think both of those people are pretty good, but I also would caution people from putting all of their eggs in this basket of hope, such as we did with Obama, who turned out to be such a massive disappointment to any true liberal, true progressive, and certainly socialist.
Right, like, in the end, he ended up being slightly to the right of Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
Like, if you look at his policies, he is slightly to the right of Ronald Reagan's policies. So which it always makes me laugh when people try to say that when people idealize Ronald Reagan and demonize Barack Obama, because there's the substantial differences aren't there.
Yeah, they're in all the policies that really matter, they're basically the same dude.
Yeah, except for Reagan had a sack and actually did amnesty.
Uh-huh.
I think that has to be the biggest one, right? Like, whatever.
Well, Reagan was sloppier and got caught. Obama's smarter and more careful. So he's not going to do something stupid like the Iran-Contra scandal.
Well, Benghazi, bro.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that just had its...
the report came out.
Yeah, I think its 7th congressional investigation just came out and said the same thing as the last 6, which is there's nothing here. There's nothing at all happened here. This is just all nothing.
And they're going to have another investigation, aren't they?
I don't know. For some reason I feel like they might just be done at this point.
Like,
with these elections out of the way and the fact that there's 2 years before the next one, I don't know. Then again, you can't underestimate the stupidity of a Tea Party voter. So if they keep wanting it, they might keep getting it served to them.
I'm curious as Glenn Beck effectively started the Tea Party movement, right?
Well, he kind of rode the wave of it, I would say. He's not.
Wasn't the
starting it?
The September 10th rally was the first big. That's when all the people who couldn't be there put the tea bags on their cars, right? I mean, but
I know
that
what
was
you're talking about, yeah.
But that was the September 10th rally, and it was supposed to be a new Boston Tea Party, and they were protesting taxes, and it was this big thing hosted by Glenn Beck. It sort of took on its own life, but the initial meeting was a Glenn Beck rally based off just a throwaway thing in the back of a book that he wrote. And I find it so fascinating that guy has had such a huge influence on politics. Like this insane person. Like, since he's been off TV, like, the stuff he says on his radio show, like, I actually think the guy's insane.
Well, he actually did say recently that he had some neurological disorder that has caused him to be operating at 10% of brain capacity for the past 5 years or whatever he said.
Oh.
Yeah, so that explains that.
So it makes sense.
So if you're in the Tea Party, your intellectual leader has been operating at 10% of normal human brain capacity, according to himself.
Wow. I'm gonna have to read on that. I hadn't heard about that. What did he have?
Well, you go deeper into it. The whole story is kind of dubious. He went to basically some quack doctor who does, like, spins you around in a chair.
Oh.
Like a
Mormon things.
Like a centrifuge of therapy or something. Like, it's all pseudoscience and there's nothing really behind it, but
does he say he's cured now and now he's 100%?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, now he's
Sell
back.
those subscriptions, bro.
Yeah. Now he's really gonna let you have the good Tea Party truth.
Do you like computers? Do you like to dance? Do you like crazy rhythm? Do you hate fucking trance? Do you hate pop culture and what it does to your head? Grab a beer, go online, rock with me instead.